There are rising instances of depression, anxiety, and a lack of emotional control. We're constantly being distracted, and there's an increasing need for things like connection and purpose in our lives. And these are just some examples of mental afflictions that we experience today. And now, what do these mental afflictions have in common? They can all be reduced by meditation. What's up, everyone? Back with another video. Today I wanted to talk about something that's very important. It's what meditation is all about. So, the one most common misconception in my eyes is that meditation is about emptying your mind. Meditation is not about sitting cross-legged on the floor and emptying your mind. So what is meditation really? In the Buddhist time, when he was teaching, the concept meditation was more akin to something like mental development or mental cultivation. So it's basically a way to train and develop our minds. And this concept of meditation is also not exclusive to Buddhism or Hinduism. You don't have to have any particular set of beliefs. You don't have to be a Buddhist to meditate. You don't have to be Hindu to meditate. You could literally be part of any religion. You could have no religion at all. I don't think it particularly matters. It's just like a way to develop our minds, right? That's what it all boils down to. And like the saying goes, to train our bodies, we can go to the gym, and to train our minds, we can meditate. And of course here, we could also train our minds by doing things like, reading books or doing like puzzles or whatever. But I think meditation kind of encompasses more of like a holistic kind of development, which is not just intellectual, but more of like an emotional development and even an interpersonal kind of development. And so now, what exactly are we developing when we meditate? And there are a lot of different answers to this. There are so many benefits that science has found meditation can help us with. So many different parts of the brain that get activated when meditation is happening. But I'd like to just home in on some of the things that I feel are most applicable to the general population. And one thing that gets developed is our ability for selective attention. And selective attention is something that is highly associated with the part of the brain, which is the anterior cingulate cortex. That's the ACC. Studies have shown that when participants are meditating, the ACC gets more activated, and there's more gamma band activity occurring in the ACC for those who are meditating, those who are long-term meditators. And just a note about gamma band waves: these are measurements of brain waves that are highly associated with things like deep focus or flow state or neural synchronies. And just to talk about selective attention in general, this is a very useful function of the brain to develop, because it basically helps us to govern what we want to direct our attention to. And in meditation, we get lost, our mind wanders, and it's basically a practice of taking our attention and be like, okay, our attention has wandered, it has veered off from the path that we wanted to take, and then we redirect it onto the breath or onto whatever the subject of the meditation is. And so this has profound impacts of daily life. How often do we find ourselves too distracted when we're working, or too overwhelmed by our emotions? This function of selective attention helps us to redirect what our brain wants to pay attention to. Another thing that has shown to improve among meditators is the relationship to stress. And this is a big one. So it's been shown that reactivity to distress decreases, so we're less reactive to things that cause us stress or fear or things of the sort. And during meditation, for example, there was one study where participants were shown distressing images, and usually the amygdala, which is the center of the brain for like negative emotions like fear or sadness. Usually that activates when we're shown or when we're exposed to like distressing images. But there was one study that showed that when meditating, when labeling the emotions and noticing the emotions that were going on as the negative stimuli was shown, that amygdala activity actually decreased. So there was less fear, there was less sadness and anguish experienced during that time. And conversely, the prefrontal cortex, which is like the rational decision maker, that was activated a lot more. So it really showed that, even in distressing situations, labeling, noticing the emotion, which is, often done in meditation, that helps us to kind of break down the difficult emotions that we're going through and kind of view them from a more objective and intellectual standpoint. Again, very helpful if you are experiencing something very distressing. Meditation helps you to break that down and really helps you to understand like what's going on here, what's going on right now, why am I having these feelings. And next we have the stereotypical benefit of meditation, which is that it helps us reduce stress. And today, 21st century, everyone's stressed. And that's, I think, one of the main reasons why people want to meditate. And basically, just to talk about some findings between the relationship of meditation and relaxation, I think it can be distilled to like two large points. The first one is that meditation helps to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is like the background automatic system in our bodies that helps us to do things like, digest or rest. And it's usually activated when we're resting, when we're at peace. That's how I remember it. A P is for peace and parasympathetic. And meditation has also been found to reduce cortisol secretion. And cortisol is a very famous hormone that's thrown around there. And of course, it's related to stress. It's an important hormone, but at the same time, too much of it is not good. It's usually an indication that you're stressed out. You gotta chill out. And meditation reduces that cortisol secretion. And I'm pretty sure at some point in our lives we've all needed that. And briefly touching on some other benefits of meditation, it's been shown to improve compassion in people. And this is like specific to the types of meditation like loving kindness, where eliciting compassion and love for people is basically the whole idea and purpose of that meditation. It's been found to improve compassion in people and even improves our willingness to help other people who are in need. And there are a lot of people in this world who are in need right now, especially now. And I always find that doing loving kindness meditation helps to put me in a mood or an attitude which is more open and accommodating for other people. And optimism is also something that has been shown to increase in meditators. And optimism is highly linked with left prefrontal dominance. So the prefrontal cortex, as I mentioned, is the rational thinking brain that makes decisions. And so if there's a dominance of activity on the left side of the prefrontal cortex, that is highly associated with optimism. And actually the founder of the organization I'm working at now, Richard Davidson, he worked with the Dalai Lama's French translator. His name is Matthew Ricard, who actually has a PhD and he's a monk. And he's also a photographer, which is pretty crazy. So anyway, they scanned the brain of Matthew Ricard and like his other monks, and the findings were pretty phenomenal. It was shown that his left prefrontal dominance was like 4.5 standard deviations above the mean. And this guy, Matthew Ricard, he was also nicknamed like the happiest man in the world because it just seemed like nothing could faze him. I think that's reflected in like the brain scan they found of him. And the last benefit I wanted to talk about is the way meditation changes our relationship to pain. So of course meditation doesn't like physically reduce the amount of pain experience, but it changes like our mental outlook of it. And for participants who were put through procedures where they went through like pain produced by heat. There was like a 40% reduction in pain intensity and 57% reduction in pain unpleasantness. So of course, in these cases, they're still experiencing the pain, they're still experiencing the heat. But instead of being averse to it, I think meditation develops our mind in a way that it helps us to accept experience and phenomena, no matter if it's uncomfortable, if it's painful. It helps us build that tolerance and sense of acceptance. And so now you might be asking, how are these things possible? How is sitting down and doing these things with your mind, how is something so simple so beneficial? Based on what I've read over the years and based on my personal experience as well, I think it boils down to a few potential mechanisms. And just a caveat, these potential mechanisms are still something that is being investigated. There is no clear consensus on it, but here's what I found and what I think makes sense as well. So the first component of our minds, or aspect of our minds, that is developed by meditation is object orientation. And so this is basically, like we talked about with selective attention, it is the ability for us to isolate a subject or an idea or a point of focus and really redirect attention towards that subject. So this provides a potential avenue for people who meditate to be able to redirect their point of focus from, distressing emotions to something like the body, the breath, or anything like that. And the next component or quality of our minds that is changed or improved by meditation is the idea of Dereification. Is basically like our subjective de-identification from our thoughts. And this could be helpful if, for example, like when I was depressed, I always had thoughts like, oh, I'm worthless, I'm pathetic. And because my sense of self is so enmeshed in that idea that I'm worthless and I'm pathetic, that's what I believe. It becomes like a core self-belief that's embedded and ingrained in my identity. Whereas this idea of Dereification allows us to step back from this thought that I'm worthless or I'm pathetic, and it helps us to notice that, these are just thoughts. This is just a passing thought that comes and goes, and it doesn't mean that I'm actually pathetic or I'm actually worthless. I think that's super powerful. It's super useful in so many aspects of our lives, and it's something that has really helped me in my times of depression. Another core component that is involved in all these associated benefits of meditation is meta-awareness. And meta-awareness is basically the idea that that you're aware of something. It's like an inward understanding of what goes on in the moment. So if you're having a thought that I'm worthless or I'm pathetic, taking the example from before, and you can think of this sort of observing our thoughts from a third-person perspective. This idea of meta-awareness is highly linked to Dereification, and when you kind of detach from that thought, you're also aware that you're thinking of the thought, which creates an even more of a distance and more of an objective viewpoint. Instead of just thinking that I'm pathetic and that's it. When meta-awareness is applied to that, it's more of okay, I'm having a thought that I'm feeling pathetic. So, that creates a sense of insulation and intellectual understanding of what's going on. I like to think of meta-awareness as having an eye inside of your mind, and that eye watches and observes everything that's going on without being involved in whatever is going on. So this is why meditation is so helpful, and this is why it's about mental development and mental cultivation. It's not just a practice to empty your mind. It's not like that at all. It helps us retrain our brain to do certain things which are so useful to our lives. For example, with object orientation, with the selective attention aspect that is improved in our minds, it can train our brain to catch ourselves when we're catastrophizing about something, or when we're ruminating and we're getting lost in the feedback loop of oh, I'm useless, I can't go outside, I don't want to go to school, and that's why I'm useless, and getting lost in that feedback loop of depression, which so often happens. Meditation helps you to take a step back away from those things, and helps you realize, okay, these are just thoughts and I can work through this. As we pay attention to the contents of our mind with meta-awareness, without attaching ourselves to our thoughts too much, it helps us to really understand what's going on objectively, without getting too overwhelmed or too lost, too emotional. And the research shows that so much benefit can be gained from the practice. And this is why I'm doing this. This is why I started my YouTube channel. This is why I want to talk about meditation, because it's just such a fantastic practice. Yeah, this was a brief overview on what meditation is and how it can help us. I hope that you start practicing meditation. If you have any questions or if you have any feedback, anything you'd like me to talk about, then please shoot them to me. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun doing this, so I'm here to stick around, like it or not. But yeah, thank you.